answer this question real quick. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us for our second episode in our Auditing 101 series, A Chef's Perspective. Today we're going to talk about allergy and gluten-free best practices from a chef's point of view. We'll also give you an action plan that you can implement in your establishment today. We'll end the webinar with a 15-minute Q&A, so please ask questions along the way in that text box at the bottom of your screen, or write them down and send them in at the end. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and take you through a couple housekeeping items. We will mute everyone's audio today, so you don't have to worry about background noise wherever you're watching this webinar. On your screen, you'll see the small chat box. Use that to type in any questions. And if for any reason the audio goes out during today's webinar, just stay on the line and you'll be placed into a lobby and be reconnected once we get the audio back up. If you happen to lose connection on your end, just dial back in and you'll be placed right back into the webinar. And finally, we will record the webinar today, as I already mentioned, but the slides will not be available as a PDF. So please take notes, ask questions, and make sure you can take all of this information back to your establishment. You know, we have a wide variety of guests today, so we're really excited to get going. Real quickly, I'm just going to read over our MenuTrinfo disclaimer. The content shown here is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. You are encouraged to verify any and all parts of this presentation with your own brand's legal counsel. Kitchens with Confidence by MenuTrinfo will not be held responsible for fines or other penalties that arise from recommendations that were made following our best understanding of all published laws and supplemental guidance documents. This webinar contains material protected under the international and federal copyright laws and treaties. Any unauthorized reprint or use of any kind of this material is prohibited. No part of this webinar may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopying, recording, or by any information storage and retrieval system without expressed written permission from MenuTrinfo, the author-publisher. All right, I'd like to get started by introducing my other co-host, Chef Keith Norman. As a former Marine and 20-year culinary veteran, Keith brings a sense of discipline and order to everything he does, both in business and in the culinary world. Chef Norman has a passion for food safety and sanitation that is apparent in his role as Assistant Executive Chef and Food Safety Manager for the South Point Hotel and Casino, and as a former culinary arts instructor at the Art Institute of Las Vegas. In both roles, Chef Norman is responsible for training and educating students and culinary professionals on one of the most important facets of the food industry. Chef Norman has professional experience in many different areas. He's not only a chef, but he is also an Allertrain master trainer, advocate, a go-to chef with many food allergy resource organizations, and now an author. Chef Norman's book, titled Allergen Awareness, A Chef's Perspective, ironically, will be released soon, so stay tuned for the release date. As you can tell, he is highly trusted within the food allergy community. And I am so happy he is here today to be my co-host, so thank you so much, Chef Keith. Chef Keith, are you here? Let me see. Oh, let me unmute you. Okay, here you go, Chef Keith. Are you on the line?
I'm there. Thank you so much for letting me be a part. Okay. So to introduce my partner for today's webinar, Allie is the manager for Kitchens with Confidence by MenuTrinfo LLC. In her current position, she conducts audits for allergy and gluten-free certifications, manages clients' monthly and quarterly reports, and works with clients to develop allergy-free best practices. She also supports MenuTrinfo nutrition department and Allertrain departments, where she assists with training for food allergies, general nutrition, and food safety. Allie is also a certified master trainer through Allertrain. She earned about BS in nutrition and food science from the Colorado State University, and I'm honored to be a co-host with you, my dear.
Oh, thank you, Chef Keith. All right, let's get into it. So here's our overview of what we will be going over today. Just real quickly, we're going to briefly talk about a recent food allergy incident that was in the industry that you all have probably heard of. Then we'll share 5 of our best practices or approaches to safely serving those with food allergies. Then we'll send you off with an action plan you can implement today at your establishment and end the episode in a Q&A session. All right, and I just wanted to share this quote from FAIR, Food Allergy Research and Education. Eating away from home can pose a significant risk to people affected by food allergies. Research suggests that close to half of fatal food allergy reactions are triggered by food consumed outside of the home. The larger truth is that the safety level depends hugely on key factors, such as whether the restaurant has trained its staff about food allergies and a system to prevent cooking and plating errors, and whether the allergic diner properly communicates the allergies and is prepared to use an epinephrine autoinjector should a mistake be made. But the trouble with food allergies are these exceptions. So in a disease without scope for error, food mistakes can have devastating consequences. And I know that is why every single one of you is attending this webinar today, because you care so much about making sure that the bad things don't happen. So let's just talk briefly about a food allergic reaction that has popped back up in the news because there is a lawsuit and it's still continuing. So in January 2016, a Boston family placed an online order for a grilled cheese sandwich from Panera Bread. This Panera Bread was specifically in Massachusetts. And I'm not here to pick on this brand or anything, but just to talk about this incident. The child's mother had noted in 2 separate places on the online order form that the grilled cheese was for a child who was allergic to peanuts, and requested that Panera make sure the sandwich was safe for her daughter to consume. Instead, the sandwich was prepared with a significant amount of peanut butter in the middle. Unfortunately, this little girl already took a couple bites before the family realized there was peanut butter on the sandwich. After suffering an allergic reaction and spending the night in the hospital, there's a civil lawsuit against Panera. This is any food service operation's worst nightmare, whether it's in the college and university setting, a small mom and pop location, or a huge chain like Panera Bread. Thankfully, in this case, the little girl survives. However, the question is asked, how could this have been avoided in the first place? In a positive light of this incident, incidents like these raises awareness of the importance of safely serving diners with food allergies, so situations like this may never happen again. So now I'm going to pass the mic on over to Chef Keith, and he's going to discuss his top 3 best practices for safely serving those with food allergies.
Thank you, Allie. So as you see from the slide, in my experience with customers, a lot of times if you don't have in place a policy where you're asking the question, is there any allergens at the table, then one of the things I find from diners is they try to order around the item. So we kind of listen for buzzwords. For instance, if a customer is removing cheese, or they're removing an ingredient from an item, I think that's the time where you're going to ask the question, is there any allergens? So that communication starting off with the diner, and a few of my my pets are attitude, right? So attitude for me means that my staff is not looking at the customer as just a customer. We know now we have an allergen, which means that we're now going to have to take more time to make sure that the meal is prepared. But it starts with that diner. First of all, we hope that they'll be honest with us and just say we have food allergies. But in my experience, we find that a lot of diners won't. So attitude for me is one, and then commitment. Once the staff understands that this is a diner that has an allergen and mistakes can cause that diner harm, I think it changes the way that we view it. And then knowledge, I think, has to come. And along the path of building your food safety / allergen awareness program, advanced training comes into play. But starting off with the diner, good communication there with the front of the house staff, and then when that order comes to the back of the house, we now have to take special precautions to ensure that the meal is prepared safely. So one of the tools that I have in place is the person in charge, or that chef or manager, will oversee the allergen preparation from start to finish, from the item or the order coming into the kitchen, preparation in the kitchen, the server or manager picking that allergen item up, which is labeled with an allergen tag, and then that server or manager will deliver that item to the customer's table first before any of the other items come out. So having done this for some time, I think that communication is key between the customer and the serving team. So when you train, you have to train everyone. Can't just train the person in charge. You have to make sure that you're, from the busser to the server, that they're able to engage the customer, because they could be first contact with the customer.
Thank you, Chef Keith. Awesome. So from the front of house, can you talk about some of the ways that you inspire your staff? Coming from a chef, how do you kind of get that your serving staff to know how to pick up those words and all of that?
Sure. So currently, we have 275 workers from the front of the house staff to the back of the house staff who have gone through the Allertrain training, so they're already certified. I pull them off the floor once a year, and we do refresher training. But I think in my initial training, just like Allie, when you started off with the Panera Bread story, I share those stories with my staff so that they understand the consequences of our lack, meaning if we're not knowledgeable. So getting them to understand a couple of things is that we do a lot of allergens, but we don't get like 15 allergens at one time. We may, over the course of a shift, an 8-hour shift, we may get 5 allergens during that shift, but they don't typically all come at the same time. So there's really no excuse, whether busy or slow, there's really no excuse for the front team to not be able to take the time. So what I've put in place at the hotel to make it simple, we have an allergen slip, which has the top 8 allergens plus other allergens that we've had over the years, citrus, lemons, garlic, those type of things, onions, so we've added those all to the pad. So when the server or busser is engaging the customer, they don't have to write anything. It's just a check mark. And then from there, they'll go now into the kitchen, make the chef aware of what the allergen is, and then at that point we can take the time to look at menus and give the server options, from which now the server returns to the table to say to the guest, chef has said these items are safe for you. They make their choice, and then that is put into the POS system, which prints to the kitchen. Allergen alert, it lists the allergen, and then the item, of course, that the customer has has chosen. So I think because we are doing this on a daily basis, I'm always sending out pre-shift notes. Anything that comes up as a red flag for me, I address it right away. Because again, customers unfortunately can be very, very challenging in the sense that they won't tell us, they don't tell us, they only tell us part of the, part of the order or part of the allergen. Maybe it's dairy plus, but they'll only say dairy. So I think keeping the server busser manager engaged on a daily, weekly basis, and then consistent training, I think, has helped me put in place a program, that I think best practices, and I think it works.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Chef.
You're welcome.
And now, on the back of house side of things, what is your communication once that allergen alert goes from the front of house to the back of house? What does the back of house communication look like between, your line cooks, the executive chefs, the prep cooks? What kind of communication goes into place once that allergen alert hits the back of the house?
Sure. So once the server has talked with the chef, we know our options. What we've put in place at the hotel is we have a designated person that will see that order from start to finish. We also have put in place a dedicated allergen kit, which gives us, cutting board, tongs, spatula, and a knife. So first, the chef will designate, and typically we do it by shift. So, for instance, day shift, there's one person that's assigned on the line to handle all of the allergens that come into the kitchen. And then again, keep in mind, I don't know. I do a lot of training. I don't know any establishment that's getting 10 or 15 allergens at one time, because we don't, and we do a lot of allergens in the building. So once that designated person has the order, gloves come off, hands are washed, and I have a purple glove, allergen-specific glove in place. And again, depending on what the item is that the customer has ordered, depends on what tools we use. And then once the order is prepared, and for instance, if it's a party of 4, the allergen meal is prepared first in the window, covered with an allergen, and it's about the size of a quarter what I use. It says allergen, so we can identify what the allergen meal is. And then once the allergen meal is ready, that server will come now back into the kitchen. That meal is given to them. They take that out first. But in our SOP, which I suggest that everyone have an SOP, because you have to have a plan that everyone follows. The chef is overseeing that preparation, again, from start to finish. So, a few fail-safes. And again, every establishment is different, so you've got to take time to look at, from the front of the house to the back of the house, how everything works, and then put a system in place that addresses what I like to call, if those of you on the call today are familiar with HACCP, I've used the basic HACCP principles to lay out my program, where I'm looking at all of the critical control points, or where items, where injury or illness can happen, and then I try to put systems in place to eliminate or at least reduce that hazard down to a safe level.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef. I mean, the key points that I really pulled out of what you just said was having a designated person preparing that food allergy safe meal, and having designated equipment, especially for allergen-free food, and then also incorporating in your SOPs and your HACCP plan all of those critical control points. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Absolutely. And Allie, another thing, when you really think about this isn't something that just happens in a day. So for those on the call today, I've been doing this since 2009, and it doesn't come without those frustrating moments, from upper management to lower management, just getting everybody to buy in. So it's a process. Yeah.
So, and you've already mentioned attitude as being one of your top 3. With attitude, it does come with time. You know, it takes time for people to change their attitude about things. But with those new employees that you might have that are coming in with years of experience, but maybe not tons of food allergy experience and things like that, how do you kind of change their attitude about it? There's so many people out there who I feel like they hear gluten-free and it's such a buzzword right now, but there are people who, you know, can really be affected by gluten. So it's not just they want to lose weight. They seriously can't eat it. So how do you kind of shape the attitudes of your employees and that?
Well, my new employees, any new hire goes through a 5-hour training session with me before they even go on the floor. So I already give them, you know, an introduction to allergens and gluten. You know, even though, you know, gluten is different from a food allergy, we treat it all the same. Whether you say dairy, milk, gluten, it doesn't matter. Once you tell us you have a special dietary need, we treat it exactly the same. But Allie, also when I mention attitude, one of the areas that was a pushback for me when I first started was executive management, who thought that some of the standards that I wanted to put in place were really extreme. And then when I was able to do a training session for executive management just to kind of show them why we're doing what we do, then you started to see attitudes change. So that's what I really mean. I think the team is easy attitude-wise, because once you identify your parents and, you know, your team members who have kids, and you kind of show him or her what could happen, that's pretty easy, you know, for them to adjust. But upper management is always looking at how are we inconveniencing the guest, right? So I found that in the beginning, upper management for me was really tough until, unfortunately, both my owner and my GM were introduced to allergens through the family. So when you start out to build your program, you got to get upper management, your owners, your CEOs, you got to get them involved so they understand that what we're doing, you know, there's a great need out there for allergen awareness.
Yeah, I totally agree. And making it on a personal level, I have found that to be really a successful and sometimes unfortunate way to really instill a different attitude. Once you have someone who you know has a severe food allergy, then your eyes open and change to it. But I think,
absolutely,
yeah, getting that upper level, you know, that kind of trickle down effect definitely is an effective way of changing those attitudes.
Yes, adding a face to the, you know, Allie, I know we're going to move on, but when you really think about, you know, what you just said, I found even when I do training abroad, when you just say, for instance, allergen guest, you know, that's kind of broad, and the chefs that I've had the honor to train, you know, look at you like, well, it's just another guest. But when you put a picture of a baby that has, you know, has broken out, or lips are big, or, you know, something that just kind of impacts them, you can't beat that part of, you know, the training.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like we've kind of briefly have touched training. Is there anything here you would like to speak to specifically, Chef Keith?
Well, just the two things, Allie. Cross contact. You know, once the check, whatever your POS system is, once that information is now in the kitchen, what I found over the years that most of our customers are asking us, hey, well, hold on, how is this being prepared in the kitchen? So once you have the information, if you're not doing it right in the kitchen, you know, of course, you're gonna create a problem as well. So I think cross contact, I would say 100% you got to be, you know, changing gloves, adding an allergen kit, you know, to your process, and then this policy. I'm just going to say there that everyone should have an SOP in place, a standard operating procedure, which covers from the time the customer says allergen to the time we safely serve the customer. Because what I found over the years of building my program is you just can't tell the worker, this is what I want you to do. It has to be, a step-by-step. And I think that also helps you in the event you have, you encounter a situation at your respective properties.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef. And I'm just speaking to the audience here. If you all have any questions for Chef Keith or myself or just general food allergy questions, please be sure to type those in, and we'll get to them all at the end here shortly. So we've got about 4 more minutes of content before we open up the lines for Q&A for us. So, all right, and finally, Chef Keith, your final big point was commitment. You said you've been doing this since 2009, so obviously your commitment is there. How do you get your staff on board and committed like you are?
Allie, I think just being a part. I mean, I'm on the floor daily. And again, going back to what we've said a couple of times, once you've shown them, and I've been fortunate, to host. We've hosted 5 allergen conferences at the hotel where a lot of my staff has been able to meet these young babies who, have multiple allergens, and they see the results when they come out to the table to talk to a child who's never eaten in a restaurant before, but now can. So I think for me it's a little easier to maintain, a standard of commitment. But I think when you put in a worker's face a baby who has, multiple allergens that had maybe multiple, reactions, they'll stay committed, And then again, I try to take all of our excuses away. We're not that busy because again, we're not getting. Last year we did 13,000 allergens between 11 restaurants. That was for the year. But they don't come in, like I said, 10 at a time. They come in 1 or 2, maybe 3, So I try to take all their excuses away. We're not too busy. It's not an inconvenience. And then I've also put, I have gluten-free options in place. We have a allergen-friendly menu in place that gives you, a dozen items that we've vetted and we know they're safe. So there's things that you can do, and I think when you do those things in your establishment where the worker knows, okay, well, I have this baby with multiple allergens, but I have an allergen menu in place, that kind of takes some of the stress and some of the pressure away from them. Because when it is busy, and we get just as busy as any other restaurant, I think if you designate a person, we know that the app station is normally not crazy busy. The app station is responsible for allergens for the day. So when they leave their station to handle an allergen, then someone else is going to pick up the slack. So when you put things like this in place, the workers will stay committed.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef. We'll go over just one more slide quickly before we start taking some questions here. So with that commitment, you're saying, you're not too busy, and I love that because working in the industry myself, in those rush hours, it seems like I can't do anything, or sometimes you get into a mentality where you're just like, go, 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 fast, 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 fast. Everyone wants their food fast, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I've seen cooks bring out food where it's like, man, I know we're in a rush, but if you did it right, I would be so much happier bringing this food out because you're missing this garnish or this or that. And, that's not in a food allergy case, but yeah, at the end of the day, what's more important, getting the food out fast or making a meal that's safe for someone with a food allergy to eat? It's a life or death situation. So that
Absolutely.
is, I think that's so powerful there. So,
Allie, just 1 second. Just even for front of the house, and again, when we started off, were we perfect? Absolutely not. We learned we learn by mistakes. And so what I mean, again, when we talk about taking their excuses away, let's look at the front of the house for just a second. So front of the house, we already know that in the course of the 8-hour shift, we are going to get 1 or 2 allergens. So already have a plan in place, meaning if I was just set a table of 20 and then I have another table and that's my allergen, now we buddy serve. Now you get another server who isn't very busy to either help with the party of 20 or to take your allergen guest. So you have to have those systems in place. You can't wait until you're busy and try to figure it out. So like I said, along my years of thankfully doing this, we've had our mistakes. We've had that front of the house server who said, well, I've just been set a big party and now I have an allergen. So we want to give good customer service. But, Ali, you're 100% right. If you cannot do it right, and what we found is when you say to the customer, ma'am, it's going to take about 5 or 10 extra minutes, is that okay? Most of the time the allergen guest is okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, we're right at our 30-minute time point. So since I have pulled this protocol slide up, I'll just quickly review it. So, Chef, you've already talked so much about this, having the SOPs, the processes in place before it happens. So knowing your code words that start the process, knowing what you can and cannot do. What can you accommodate in your kitchen? There's more than just the big 8 allergens out there. So it's important to treat every allergen as if it is a big 8, but knowing what you can and cannot do. And then having those prep areas or designated separate spaces, having a designated person, and then the delivery, making sure that you see the process all the way through till the plate is set down in front of that guest with an allergen. Identifying, Chef, you said you guys cover the plates in the kitchen, which is so important when you're preparing allergen-free foods in a space that has a high risk of cross-contact. So, so we do have a couple questions here. And some of the other points that I was going to talk about are just about substitutions and reading labels, food allergy recalls, personal hygiene, and how that all works together. And then we also do have an action plan here for you guys. I do want to just quickly go over this. Creating a food allergy plan, as Chef has already said, it takes time, but see the process through and get your upper levels to buy into it. And then training your staff, everywhere from the top all the way down to the bottom, bussers included, hosts included, knowing how to execute it, and then auditing your food allergy process. Going back and verifying and validating what you're doing is right, and that you have eliminated all places of cross contact. So now we'll go into questions. Thank you all for your patience, since I know we do have some already coming in. So this is from someone, and Chef, you or I can answer this one. Do you use the same allergy kit for all the different allergies? And Chef, you said you guys have a ton, so why don't you take this one?
Well, we have, I have in each one of my restaurants 3 allergen kits per restaurant. But once the allergen kit is used, if you're unable to have 3 or 4, after each allergen meal is prepared, goes through the dish machine and back into use. So I think if you're able, I'm able to have multiple kits in my in the kitchens, and I do. But if you don't have that capability, washing it after every use will work.
Okay, great. Yeah, and on that too, knowing what allergens have been used on your allergen kits between uses too, and making sure they are cleaned and sanitized between uses, because what we see is it's not just dairy allergy, it's dairy and peanuts, or gluten, peanuts and tree nuts, and things like that. So knowing that although it might be an allergen kit, it might not be free from an allergen that someone else might have. So always cleaning and sanitizing those kits if you only have one.
Yes.
All right, and this next question is for you, Chef. Do you believe that everyone in a food service operation be trained in a basic allergy program? If so, which one?
I say yes, because I've used Allertrain for my training. There's others out there, but I think that the Allertrain program gave my team a little added. And keep in mind, I've been doing training at the hotel, since I got there. So we were already at a really, I'm going to just say, comfortable level of providing safe allergen service to our guests. But the Allertrain training took us, I think, to a different level. So I'm really going to just promote, the Allertrain programs for, the basics are the basics. And I think with your SOP in place to support your training, then that's just a win-win. But Allertrain is my vote.
Well, thank you, Chef. We appreciate you saying that, but we know that there are many, many different allergy programs out there, and we really appreciate you saying that Allertrain is the one you would recommend. If anyone has any questions about Allertrain programs, feel free to reach out after this webinar. We'd be happy to get you more information on those programs. We do have everything from Allertrain, which is, the manager level course, all the way down to the light courses, which are for your food handlers, your resident advisors at the college and university levels, and all people that might be involved in food allergy care. So, and here is a second question for you, Chef. How do you deal with employees from different cultures, such as ESL employees, both in the front of house and back of house?
Well, most of our workers, especially our Spanish and Asian, do speak really good English and able to communicate. In our cafe, which is a dual kitchen, we have the American side and the Asian side. One of our American supervisors are always involved, and if I'm in the building, I'm normally involved as well. So I don't really have a big language barrier problem at the hotel, and in the areas where I have for instance, almost every one of my supervisors are bilingual, so I don't really have a big problem with the language barriers there. But if you do, I'm sure there's always someone in the establishment that that can effectively communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll chime in here too. When you're dealing with language barriers, there's different industry groups that you can join that you might be able to find, reach out to fellow chefs. That's one of the great things about our Allertrain Master Trainer program is we really try and keep the Master Trainers connected and feel like they can be a resource for each other also. So, reaching out within the industry, Allertrain does have courses in Spanish, as well as our Allertrain Lite is now in Mandarin Chinese. So I think language barrier, there's definitely answers there, and then cultural differences. I've found that working in a different industry with different cultures, it's really helpful to meet them where they're at and try to understand that other culture and the differences there. So, trying to meet them where they're at and and understand that their culture is different, but then try to, create that attitude and commitment that Chef was talking about, where it is important, it is a life or death situation. So I think that's a way you can deal with different cultures and meeting them where they're at. So
yes.
Do we have any other questions right now? Or Chef, do you have anything else you'd like to speak on?
No, Allie, I think really we've covered some good material. Again, I just go back to saying to the audience, you got to have a plan in place. Don't expect the plan to be perfect. And again, those who are familiar with HACCP, if you use that allergen HACCP as your guide, and again, from front of the house to back of the house, just look at all those touch points from front to back, and try to put a plan in place. And then you cannot go wrong with formal training.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending and participating in our webinar today. There will be a follow-up email sent with a summary and post-meeting survey. If you have a couple minutes after this, please fill the survey out. We would love to hear your feedback so we can continue to improve these webinars and get you the content that you're interested in, and that will help you safely serve those with food allergies. We know it's a tough topic, and it's an important one too. So if you're still hungry for more and interested in learning more about our auditing or specifics that we didn't cover, in the email you'll find links to our next webinar, Auditing 101 Best Practices, and that will be on August 13th. Once again, this webinar is available to you for the special price of free. And you can also sign up for our free newsletters and stay up to date with all food allergy news, legislation, and training and tips at www.MenuTrinfo.com. That's menu nutrition information smushed into one word. And finally, if you still have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at Ally, that's ALLY, at MenuTrinfo.com. Thank you, and a special thank you for Chef Keith Norman. You are amazing, and we so appreciate your expertise here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Al.
And with that, I will leave you all. Have a great rest of your Monday and a great week. Thank you.